Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance,
And I'm George-Affleck.
and it's time for
Bigger, faster, higher. We can rebuild Broadway. UnSpun.
the Broadway plan. The Broadway plan. Let's
I'm
talk
getting what I
Broadway
want. You're
plan.
not getting what you want.
Hey, listen, I am game as it gets for building out what you taught me is the
Mhm.
Broadway plan is about a chunk of Broadway that really is the quote unquote downtown of our
Yes.
city. And it needs to be built out to reflect that. I do believe that there is a time and a place for a tower. How about that? Have I come
Well, there's going
around
to
a
be a
little,
lot of
George?
towers on Broadway now, I
I
think.
know,
So,
I know.
a lot.
Yeah. So you got your
Uh,
way. Congratulations. Congrats.
I suppose we should fill people in if they haven't heard this. Last night's council didn't take, in Vancouver, did not take staff's recommendations, which was to slow down the development along the Broadway corridor in Vancouver. There was a decision by the previous council that, there's a whole Broadway plan, it's called, which includes some significant density on Broadway, which is the big street in Vancouver, and slightly off Broadway as well, a couple of blocks down from Broadway. So a
Right.
significant portion of a big chunk of the city. Second biggest business district in British Columbia. Second biggest employment area in British Columbia, next to downtown
Wow.
Vancouver. So mostly hospital workers, obviously city hall workers, a lot of government workers along Broadway. That's why there's those huge numbers. So yeah, council, it's surprising when a council doesn't take staff's recommendations. Vision was very, very staff. Yes, if staff say this, we shouldn't do it. And I was like, screw staff. I mean, sorry, terrible idea. And no, I think we can ask staff to not, we don't have to listen to staff every time. And I'd get in so much trouble for that when I was in office. So, oh, you're disrespecting staff. I'm like, no, I just think they're wrong on this count. And in this
And
case,
that's
I
why you're
really,
elected to office. You're there
yeah,
to be the filter and the lens, right? Like to bring
absolutely. And I'm not
to
saying
the
micromanage. I'm not saying
no.
rewrite the report yourself, which Vision used to do. I'm not rewriting the report. I'm just saying we can do better.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying. I'm sorry, not sorry.
I'm just
So
saying
let's
I'm going
get
to
to the
go in there and
specifics. Let's
yeah,
get to some specifics here because okay, Broadway plan, which primarily is West Broadway and a
yeah.
little bit of East Broadway, I
Yeah,
guess. So because it's
to
kind
main
of
to commercial, yeah.
main commercial drive to Arbutus basically, but
Arbutus.
primarily Granville, right? Like it's
Yeah, I know
primarily
Main
Granville
Street's pretty
Street.
significant too. Where my
Right,
office
but
is, which is on Broadway.
commercial drive, sorry,
Yeah.
commercial drive
Mm-hmm.
to the east
Yeah.
to Granville and a trickle down towards Arbutus because that's where the subway line is going to end, right? At
Yeah.
Arbutus. So all the way along that
Mm,
corridor is
yeah.
getting rezoned, revamped, built up, taller, bigger, to have
Mm-hmm.
businesses broaden out and have people be able to work closer to where they live. And the concern
Yeah.
that the let's slow this down, which blew my mind because I feel like we have been talking about this for 300 episodes of Unspun.
Mm.
Um, haven't we already
Uh,
talked about all this? Haven't we?
uh,
Are we, are we not
I
like,
I love it when
should
a
we build it now?
sorry to the bureaucrats. I love it when a bureaucrat tells me to slow down. I'm like, no. How about you speed up? No offense to planning staff, but figure it out. Deal with it. There's a plan.
Why do they want to
You
slow
guys wrote the
down?
plan. People want
Yeah.
to implement the plan. Figure it out. That's your job. It's already been approved. No, 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 no.
Right.
You shouldn't have put a report in front of the last council that put a plan together if you can't implement it. No, it's your job to figure it out. And this council made that decision. It's like, no, do it.
What was
Got
the
it.
reason for wanting to slow it down though, George? What
It's
was the
not,
reason?
yeah, process. It's just, I think there is a concern about engagement was always an issue. Obviously, significant density that will come with a lot of controversy. You just the process, because we've created so much bureaucracy and development in the city, making sure they lead this and lead that and green that and roof that and list that. It'll be a tough slog for staff to make sure they sign off on everything. Of course, what they should be doing is finding a way to fast track things that and with approved developers. We've talked about this many times on the show. It's something that was approved way back when I was there, which was this concept kind of like the Nexus Pass in when you go across the border. Like, let's get some developer. It still hasn't really, nothing's been done about this to the level that I think it should be, which is, okay, you are an established builder. I don't care what size builder, small home builder, big developer. You've never got in trouble. We've never had to go in there and ask you to do this or that, because there are developers, small ones and big ones, who are always, and I know who they are, because we would get these reports. We staff know who the ones are that don't follow the rules and are always trying to get around them. Then there's ones that absolutely always follow the rules and stick to the rules, and so just give them, reward them. You let them move faster. They get hired to build a building because that's one of the reasons. They will build it and they will get it faster and they will do it right. Why are we rewarding? Why are we being socialistic in our embracing of people who build buildings? If one guy does it shady and the other person always does it right, but the guy who does it right has to sit in the same lump as the guy
the same lens.
shady.
Yeah,
that's not cool.
And can get delayed by that shady guy's
of course
issues.
And they create more
totally
bureaucracy to deal with that guy. And you're like, but I'm out here busting my ass building things right, and you're punishing me because that guy's a scam artist. That's not right.
Yeah. I like that idea of creating a seal of approval that fast tracks good. And I like the fact also, George, that that levels the playing field a bit, because it's not just about how much money you have and how much you spend and how big your development is. It's about how you are as a developer. And there is no housing being built without developers. So people that are like, developers are all bad. No, they're not. No, they're actually not. And coming up with gentle density versus, super incredibly high density, where that belongs is often a real push and pull as well. As we started this podcast today on that, it's like, you're on that side and I'm on this side. There is middle ground to be had on that. Yes. And driving around in some of the larger pieces of property, like Southwest Marine Drive. I don't know when the last time you drove down Southwest Marine Drive was, but I happened to take that route out of the city last weekend. I was headed out to Richmond to do something. I thought, it's so beautiful, I'm going to drive all the way around and come around. And there's some significant density going on some of those humongous properties down there. And it's being done done in a way that doesn't disrupt the next person's, $15 million piece of turf. I forget
the name of the house that we approved it. And I think it's finished now, or get close to finished. It was a beautiful house, and it was really sad to see it kind of have to be, they put in basically
the
significant.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
that's Casa. Thank you. And they turned it into, seniors living basically.
And there's seniors cottages, and then there's one central building. So they're big, beautiful houses that overlook the river. I'm just seeing it, through the trees. I'm a little bit. I'm like Homer Simpson a bit, looking through the trees. Weird. But they're beautiful. Looks like the home that was there, Casamia or whatever it was called, a couple of those. Mm-hmm. And then there's a rather almost hospital-like main building, but it's low enough that it's behind the hedge and you can see it if you look by. So if the people who are living in that space need to have more help, they can do that. I don't know who runs it. Yes, of course it's about wealthy people, and that's whatever, but let's start somewhere. There are so many,
and we've talked about your neighborhood.
Homes.
We've talked about your neighborhood. Yeah. One of my concerns about, so they had spent a whole week.
I want how much density in my neighborhood, by the way.
I know, but you have the kind of density that you can't actually see for the most part. If you go to your neighborhood, if you go to Lower Kitts area, south, west Point Grey, where there was a planning process or a development or a community plan process that was put in late 70s, I think, maybe early 80s.
80s.
That has led to these single family homes being turned into multiple units, depending on, you can't even tell some of them. I said this last time, I think. Sometimes I drove by a house, oh my God, I never noticed that house before. And I could see how many, we were walking actually. Amanda and I were walking from Jericho, and we were walking down one of the streets that I don't think I've ever walked on. I think, I'm like, look at that. Oh, look at that. So that's an example of a neighborhood plan that came up with a concept. That's for that neighborhood. Broadway plans another area, Yaletown's another area. There's a West End plan that's seeing significant growth because of that plan. What I'm worried about right now is this council, while they're busy doing all these things and approving and giving and spending all our money, there's no that I know of any local area plan being planned. There's no, for example, Upper Kitts. What's happening with that? What about Dunbar? What's the plan for Dunbar? What's the plan for West 10th Avenue? What's the plan for Southeast Vancouver, Victoria and 49th? What about that area? What about Hastings, Sunrise? Why not a plan for that area? What about along Renfrew or Boundary Road? Why not a plan for Boundary Road? What's the deal? There's so much density we could put on Boundary. What about around Joy Street? What about Nanaimo Station? What about none of this
All
is
of
in the
it.
hopper? None of it's in the hopper.
No.
Commercial in Clark and First, all along Clark there. That all should be, as part of that. There should be a redevelopment plan for anything along that on the west side of Clark. There should be a whole plan of housing and warehousing and businesses.
Modernization, just modernization beyond what we're seeing there that has just sort of been stuck. And I hear you. We got a lot to get to. And along those lines, while, the Broadway plan, should we slow it down? Okay. Frustration, because that's getting us nowhere to help where people really need the help. And one of the things, can we just, before we move from the Broadway plan, can we talk about the bike lane situation there? Because there's 6 lanes on Broadway in the Broadway plan. And within that was supposed to be a protected multi-use lane. And George, when I hear this, it makes my head spin, because there's this like, we've got to put a permanent separated bike lane on Broadway. I'm like, but all of 8th Avenue is a bike lane. 7th Avenue is a bike lane. 10th Avenue is a bike lane. How many bike lanes do we need? Because people need to be able to access the businesses and to access the spaces along Broadway. Like, this is not
about pedestrians? Hello.
Right.
If they're
Make wider sidewalks.
Lane, can I have a wider sidewalk so I can sit at a restaurant on Broadway?
On a patio.
Can we create a center line, or maybe we can?
Agreed.
I mean, what is this obsession with putting in this bike? This is not anti-bike lane. We got you covered. If you want to take away some parking spots on 10th Avenue to make that bike lane more efficient, go to town. Why would you want to ride a bike on Broadway? It's ridiculous.
You wouldn't.
It's ridiculous. It's
it's political.
It's so political. And can we just focus on pedestrians for a while, please?
Yes.
Not cars, not bikes, pedestrians. The number one fastest growing mode of transportation in Vancouver, walking. And you do nothing. This council for years has done so little for pedestrians. It's brutal. Speaking of pedestrians, I'm just going to throw this out here. I don't know if you saw, there's somebody tried to jump off Burrard Street Bridge. Burrard Street Bridge. Tragic. Didn't do it. Didn't pick up, but they got over.
I thought we put up fences.
Yes,
that
I voted against, because I said this is not going to work. So this guy got over the fence. The didn't jump. He was standing there. They couldn't get to him, so they had to cut the whole fence out to get to him. And because they couldn't climb over the fence. And I'm thinking, what? See this? And as a pedestrian experience, this was my argument in council of why I did not like this read, is that portion of it, that fence. If you're a pedestrian and you walk, and I challenge anybody who has ever gone over Burrard Street, get out of your car, get off your bike, and walk across that bridge, and tell me that experience is enjoyable now that you have to walk through a jail cell.
It feels like you're in jail. It does.
It's depressing and ruins the view and experience. It's the dumbest thing that council. I know there's these suicides. It's terrible. I get it, but it hasn't helped. It hasn't stopped. There was a guy who jumped literally a couple of weeks after they launched and built the fences. He jumped and succeeded. It's crazy. And of course, there are lots of places that people. Anyways, think about the pedestrian, please, City Council of Vancouver and planning people and engineering staff. Put pedestrians first for a while. Well, yeah.
And the backlash that comes from citizens of this city, I know we're sticking tight to Vancouver. We'll get to more to municipal or beyond our municipality of
I'll just say,
City of Vancouver.
Every city, Jody, should think about pedestrians. Every city.
I agree with you. 100% on that. So in the interest of just keeping to some of the other topics that we have here, I want to get to the fact that the pushback on the cup fee that was implemented by the prior administration in the City of Vancouver, whereby we would all pay a cup fee because that was going to stop cups from being used. I'm so relieved to hear that this has been pulled back. It's going to take some time. It's so dumb. So dumb. And I hope bags are next, because how many freaking reusable bags do we really need? I have a bin full of reusable bags, And every time I go shopping, I know it's my fault that I can't remember to bring the bag with me, but I inevitably buy another bag
And
for
I can tell you
$1.99.
with absolute certainty that in camera, I was in these meetings several times when I was in council, and staff would say, please don't get rid of the plastic bags. Demand that the plastic bags be better quality, less, less,
Invasive.
thinner
Yeah,
or more biodegradable. But what you're going to create is a massive problem, massive amount of paper that will be used to make paper bags, and people will be buying all these cotton bags, which are horrible, or big plastic bags like those IKEA ones or whatever. These bags that I have hundreds.
Stop looking in my closet. How do you know I have all those IKEA bags?
I always, and so last night I always have a bag in my bag, but it's and then when you forget a bag, you're so mad. And of course,
I'm so mad.
The city's not getting any of this money. It's all going to the private sector, and I'm sure they're putting that money right back into their environmental efforts. Whatever. It's a terrible idea. And if you ask a real person who understands environmental and how to the straw thing, I get, because it's not just about straws, it's not just about the plastic, it's what happened and the horrible things that they do to animals and how they end up in our ocean and all that stuff. And plastic bottles,
you're gonna get attacked for that, buddy.
Plastic bottles.
I know. I remember what happened to me when I mentioned plastic bottles and straws once. Yeah. Just get ready, because somebody on Twitter just heard you said that and you're gonna get mobbed.
Nah. It's like mentioning dog controls. Don't ever do that in politics.
Don't ever do
dog.
That. Okay, so don't. So before we get to the budget, because the federal budget came down, we got to get to that. Couple more things that are on the mind of water features are coming back. So the cup fee is going away. The water features are being turned back on. Congratulations for that. Public safety, again, in the headlines, though. Public safety continues to be a ridiculously difficult issue, particularly in the city of Vancouver. We'll get to, Mike Farnworth in Question Period. We record on Thursday. I was just watching Question Period, getting drilled. The soft on crime premier words were like, you could tell that everybody had gotten the talking points about it because of the tragedy that took place in front of so many bystanders on a Sunday afternoon. I'm so horrified to tell you that I was just scrolling through my Twitter and I saw the actual unedited video begin, and I immediately swiped away, but it was too late. It was too late. I didn't see all of it. I saw enough of it that I will never, ever be able to unsee that. Like, people who are sharing that video, if you have that video on your phone, out of respect to the deceased, out of respect to Mr. Schmidt and his partner and his daughter, please delete that video. It's not cool. It's not cool. And I'm disgusted by, obviously the incident of just a man going up to somebody and saying, please don't vape around my kid. Next thing you know, he's dead. Yeah.
It's something that we, as a parent, you've probably done it yourself to people vaping or smoking in places where they're not supposed to smoke or vape. It's, and to think that random attack, I mean, it's just so random. It's so unusual see a randomness like that. I think there was a Starbucks murder several years ago, if you remember, on Davie or on Robson Street. The guy, I think it was a worker though, also I think knifed, or was he shot? I can't remember. Anyways, it's just tragic, and it I don't know the situation with this guy. Clearly, probably mental health care issues, whatever. But I think begs the question: is things getting more violent or in our cities? That's obviously what,
of course, they are
talking about. And
of course it is.
Yeah. And
but on a provincial, right. But on a provincial level, the discussion is about how many, I think it's something like 3,000 reoffending crimes could be traced back to fewer than 200 people.
Wow. Yeah.
It's like,
I think we've solved the problem.
Right. But we need to collect more data. Isn't that enough data?
It's like the foster care program. And luckily they're starting to finally do some stuff like that. I think the data that I got when I first got elected, and I always bring this up, was like 60 or 70% of the people who are homeless have gone through the foster care system. Okay. I think I found a problem here. 60 or 70% of homeless people? Yeah. It's they've at some point been through the foster care system. And
I didn't know.
So,
that is horrifying.
We felt you see the problem, but you don't fix it. That's bad governance. That's bad leadership. and it's not a left or right thing. It seems like everybody seems to be guilty. You know, I talk about it's always hard for a politician to make decisions about something that's going to, well, he won't see the satisfaction of it for 30 years. That's really frustrating for that politician because that's not a winning thing, you know, because of course there's going to be a lot of pain.
Right.
You know,
Up
France being the perfect example of that right now, where they're trying to say, look, we're going to be out of money in 10 years, out of money to pay pensions. We can't continue this current model. And so it's either one or two things. We go up in age, or I take more money from you. Which do you want? There is no other solution to a basically social, you know, welfare system, which is the pension plans that most Western civilized countries have. It's welfare. Guess what? When you're 65 in Canada, or 67 now, I think it is, you get to go on our welfare system, the Canadian pension plan, which you contribute to, of course.
Right.
But the government, you know, invests, matches it, and does. So, you know, France is saying, look, we can't do this. So, and he's going to probably be destroyed as a politician, but he's going, I got no choice.
No choice.
And so in the case of, that's brave. And even if you don't agree with him, it's brave to do something that you're not going to see the qualitative things that will help you get reelected within the 2 years. It's 20 years. And you're like, damn, that's tough decision. So you see these politicians not making decisions about things that I think will make a difference in 20 years. We've talked about this. The numbers are pretty clear. Homelessness and housing. The problem started 30 years ago, a little more than 30, which gets, hey, that's a generation. It's going to take a generation to fix what we broke 30 years ago.
Yeah. Let's talk about the budget. Speaking of breaking and making and the level of debt the level of debt that we're facing on a federal scale, billions, 40 billion
predicted,
you know,
and then they're going to make a cut. So 3% straight across. That's going to hurt Ottawa. All the bureaucrats. You're going to see you see the housing prices suddenly crash in Ottawa. You know, that's a big amount of money to cut. And I think obviously unusual for this Liberal government, although Jean Chrétien was very good at cutting, and Paul Martin. Those things I just talked about that happened 30 years ago, that was Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin cutting the National Housing Program. That was the NDP government in British Columbia cutting the mental health care programs that we had at that time and not replacing them with anything. And then the Liberals got in and didn't fix it. You know, now we're looking at this 3% cut. So you got to cuts, but where you say across the board, but 3% for one department versus 3% another. It's going to be a hard hit for some of the ones like social welfare, things like that, where it'll be interesting to see how this pans out. That's the problem with government. It's like a hammer. So you can't be very nimble in government. Let's do this over here. Let's do that. But it does, you know, hey, why is Vancouver doing 11% increase in their budget? And then we've got Justin Trudeau finding a way to get 3% cut. Hey, Vancouver, check it out.
Yeah. Can I mention Brad West here? Can I mention? Because when they say, well, federal is different than municipal, it's like, okay, how about that? So we're going to probably end up talking about more things to do with budget, but there's a lot in there that's the spending is on climate, healthcare, dental care, trying to address some of the housing situation, which, you know, the mix of the two, the cut versus the payout, and trying to balance it all, you know, it's a hard one to unpack, to be honest, because so much of it is, it's almost ethereal because there's so much that we've all been collectively going through, and the inflation piece is so massive. It's hitting everybody. You and I are entitled white people of means, and it's hitting us. And I'm not saying and it shouldn't. I'm saying if it's hitting you and I in a meaningful way, I cannot imagine what somebody who was struggling before this all hit is dealing with today. And the middle ground, the mushy middle person in me wants to do whatever it takes to help that person. I can live with less. I can pay more in order to make sure that somebody else. That's the Dane in me, right? Like I want society to help. Socialist. Like I would gladly. Socialist. God. Yeah. Here we go. Woke.
I
Bring
lived in
my woke
Denmark
title
for a
back, you
year. I
know?
lived in Sweden for a year. Denmark versus Sweden. I mean, Denmark's very, at least when I was there, that's the ultimate social democracy. Very expensive to live there, but very
Very
committed also
expensive.
to the private sector. So there's a way to, you
Yeah,
can have both.
there's a way to balance that.
Um,
So before we run out of time here, because we are 25 minutes into our 30 minutes, fastest 30 minutes in BC politics and federal politics, I want to mention Portapique, that mass shooting in Nova Scotia that happened almost 3 years ago. The report now in, and very critical of the RCMP's handling of this, not surprisingly so, but it's like dereliction of duty, leadership astoundingly poor, not informing the public as it was happening, could have saved lives. Like, and the fact that this individual was able to do and gather together all of the pieces of the weaponry and the vehicle that looked like an RCMP vehicle, like it was a decommissioned vehicle, how
yeah.
he was able to do all of this in plain sight with people that knew
For
he was doing
hours
that,
and
and
hours and hours and
hours and
hours
hours and
and
hours and
hours.
hours. And I wonder, and I hope, I, with due respect for all people who work in law enforcement who put themselves in harm's way, there needs to be change around, it's kind of like the difference of watching the body camera viz of what happened in the mass shooting, the school shooting in Nashville this week, versus the body cam footage of what happened in Uvalde. To blame all law enforcement with one big brush would be a huge mistake, because watching how the reaction was with those two very similar situations, and the response was very different from quote unquote law enforcement. So I understand that the generalization of RCMP here, but the report of the RCMP in this situation certainly requires some reflection, due diligence, and hopefully some meaningful consequences.
And is it a problem across the board, across the entire RCMP? Is it a regional issue? This is something the RCMP is going to be wrestling with from this report. It's a big deal. Here in BC, of course, we have a battle going on right now in Surrey about the quality of whether we should keep, the RCMP or the Surrey police, which goes back to the original reason why they started this process. They were unhappy with the RCMP's abilities to solve a lot of their problems. Well, why? Why were they unhappy with the RCMP? What has happened to the RCMP that you see this across the board? Seeing this across Canada in certain areas where they don't have a local police force, and they seem to become more and more upset with the RCMP. Is it become too bureaucratic? Does it lost its focus? Is it trying to do too much? Should there be,
And
like in
George,
America,
like
where you have an
as a
FBI
woman, can I point out the sexual assault and harassment cases in multi hundreds of millions, if not billions, in costs associated with that, and self-regulation? There's a lot there. We're going to continue to talk about it. But before we go, let's end on a bit of a different, lighten it up kind of kicker story. You familiar with this piece of public art, the unsanctioned spider?
Yeah, I've heard about it. Yes. How dare they create art without me approving it as a citizen?
Recycled materials used to create this massive spider that is sitting like on a wall of the SkyTrain track around the commercial Broadway subway line.
I can tell you, Amanda will not be going to that location as a.
Is she an arachnophobe?
Oh my God. She screamed. I'm like, what are you? And Quinn showed her a TikTok or something of a spider. I said, it's literally on your phone. It's not. It's like she's so scared of them.
Funny.
Yeah.
Interesting. Hey.
So she won't be going to that location. So yeah, so this is kind of like Banksy in England, who does these things. They're just paintings. This is a three-dimensional thing.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's large three-dimensional thing. And somebody posted about it. I can't remember who it was now, or I'd give them credit. But it's like, you know what, Vancouver should get more like Tokyo, because Tokyo's City Hall actually has a Godzilla on it.
That's cool.
So they're saying, like,
let's get a sense of humor.
Take the spider off the public thing and put it on City Hall. And it's interesting because the public backlash over it being taken down, because it was unsanctioned. So it's like, that's got to come down. Now there's pushback on that, and it's Save the Spider. And Junko Playtime, the guy that the anonymous artist who created this.
Not so anonymous.
But he doesn't do interviews. Like, I don't know what he looks like, but I've heard his voice before. So he's a little bit Banksy, a little bit more identifiable than Banksy. But it got us to thinking. Linda and I were talking about, we're actually going to talk more about it on the show. I'm looking forward to hearing her thoughts. But there's lots of art that we don't necessarily all agree upon. I mean, and the cost of something. You and I've talked about the chandelier under the Granville Street Bridge, the
I love
$13
it.
million spinning chandelier, and
Paid
every
for
time
by
I
a
go down there,
developer,
it's
by the
not
way, not by
working.
the
It's
private,
not
not by
working.
the public. It was paid for by the
Totally.
developer. I love
Yeah.
it. It's my neighborhood. It goes by. I know you said it was broken when you went by there. I haven't seen. I see it all the
I
time,
don't
and
know if
it
it was
sounds
broken.
working.
It was turned off. I don't know if it was
Yeah,
broken. I was just there on a Saturday night for Robin Stickley's birthday at a restaurant down there, and it was off and not moving. And I was like, well,
yeah.
damn, it's Saturday night at
That's
7. Wouldn't it be working?
It should. It should. It's unusual, I think, because it does work whenever I see it working. So that's
Cool.
cool. There's also, there's Biennale does that program which creates public art.
Binal. Is it Biennale? I always thought it was Binal.
I think it's Biennale. I think.
Okay.
The
I
city
believe
also
you.
has,
You're
yeah, the city also has a ton of money, right, for public art that they can't keep up with. When a developer, it used to be what they used to do is this developer, this is kind of the chandelier thing. He said, I want to put a chandelier. And that's what you had to, as part of your development plan in the bigger
yeah,
projects, you had to donate to the arts
something pretty.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
But when I was there, Vision decided to make it a fund only and not force these developers to get creative. And it kind of sucks because this fund just kind of builds up, and then who decides on where the money goes? It made developers think about, okay, I'm building this building. Like if you go around, there's one just down the street from, if you go past the chandelier down the street, it's super weird. It's like a long concrete kind of picnic table in the middle of a park. I don't know, it's art, but it's cool. Then there's weird things like that ladder on Kingsway. A lot of people hate it. I think it's kind of cool. In fact, when I'm driving on Kingsway, I'm thinking, okay, I'm only that far away now from where I need to get to because I can see that piece of art. And
the ladder,
by, the ladder.
Or the tall red lacquer sort of alien-like person down near David Lamb Park.
Quinn
there's
hates it. This gets people talking.
I don't hate.
This is the point.
Yeah, it's a talking point. But there's the stop signs behind Vanier or behind the planetarium. There, the little chairs with inspirational things on it down at Kitts Beach. There's the Laughing Men down at English Bay. There's the
donated by Chip Wilson. I mean, so this is the thing.
There's the stack of busted cars. I think that one's gone though. The wrecked cars.
Thank God that's
gone. Why did it go? It did suck, but where
it
did it go?
It was part of that. I think that was part of the BNL. I think.
Oh, okay. So it's temporary.
Yeah, that one was temporary. Thank goodness. There was also that beautiful one I loved, Upside Down Church in Cole Harbor. I love that one, but that's gone now too. It was kind of up behind, just up the hill, sort of at Cole Harbor there. Anyways, there's also that.
I don't think I ever saw that one.
That little house on this water as well. That's cool. There's so many cool pieces. There's that diamond ring in English Bay. So there's so much great public art, and so this guy, I don't know. There's a process. It's this ultimate debate, you know. And when it's something like that's quite large, there is a process to get public art and lots of money for it. So I don't know, but maybe this council needs to start thinking about it, because I know they're wishy-washy on this one. Like, oh, maybe we should leave it. But it's one of those tough challenges for a bunch of politicians if they don't.
Because if you're leaving the unsanctioned,
guys, what about my graffiti on this wall? That's art.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. George, we're out of time.
Out.
George, or on Twitter at
George_Affleck.
That was good. George_Affleck. That was really good. At Jody Vance, Jody with a Y, at Jody Vance. And I'm going to leave you with one little footnote, George, and I'll update you next week. I actually heard from a government official about the whole trying to make change with online harassment. Preliminary contact has been made. I'll keep you posted.
Some prisoners. I like it.
I'm going to try my best, buddy. I will see you later on UnSpun.
See you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye.